best studio musicians in LA were all playing together, and I didn't have a ticket, so I had to sneak into this concert, but I was so excited. And all night long, the guitar players were trading licks back and forth, and they were having the best time. But I never heard a single note that they played because they had all the mids scooped out, and they had so much effects on their instruments that it was just a mud cannon. And I have to say that was not the most positive experience. It was my energy was kind of low because I was a little bit let down. The energy of the audience was pretty low because they couldn't hear the guitar players that they've spent their entire day thinking about. And then Abe Laboriel took a bass solo, and it was clear, and it was punchy, and his groove was just amazing, and the energy just went like this. I couldn't believe it. It went from there to through the roof, just because you could hear his groove clearly. And so our whole reason for being, our whole reason for doing what we do is to help you as a bass player connect with your audience so that they can hear you and they can feel your energy. And if they can feel your energy, you can feel theirs. And how does it feel when you're playing in front of a bunch of people and you can feel their energy? It feels amazing. And so it fills you with energy, and you play better, and they have a better experience. And it doesn't matter if you're a business trying to build a brand or if you're a band trying to build a following. The secret is providing your customers or your audience with positive experience after positive experience after positive experience. And that makes them want to come back. That makes them want to follow you. So tonight I'm going to talk about what we do at Dingwall Guitars and how it all connects to your audience. I come from the guitar world, and specifically I come from the 80s shred guitar world, which explains my hair. Speed and stability. So that's what we try and achieve with our basses. Not that you have to play our basses fast, but that they're capable of being played fast. Okay, so how do we do that? It all starts with the neck. And oh man, did we ever create a problem for ourselves making our necks longer than average, slimmer than average, and trying to achieve a lower than average action? Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we're very thoughtful and purposeful about our neck woods. So, of course, we use quality woods. Everybody uses quality woods, at least in the high-end space. But all woods are different. And so we've taken the time to precisely measure how much the woods expand and contract with moisture changes, humidity changes. And we will only pair woods that are compatible with each other. For instance, we won't use anymore, we won't use ebony with wenge because they're completely opposite. It may sound amazing, and there's nothing wrong with a neck per se that's made out of those two woods. You'll just have a neck that is always changing every time the weather changes. And that, to us, is not what we want in our instruments. I will say that an ebony fingerboard on a wenge neck sounds pretty amazing. But that's not the reason that we quit using it. We quit using it because it was more active than we wanted. So if you have an ebony and wenge neck, I'm not saying negative things about your bass. Okay, so the neck needs to be stiff because it is more slender. It needs to be stiff, but not too stiff because if it's too stiff, it sounds sterile. And so there's a balance between stiffness and resonance that we try and match right down the center. Okay, and now for my favorite part of a neck, the truss rod. How many people know what the truss rod does? Show of hands. So the truss rod is critically important for a couple of reasons, but once you put it in a neck and you glue the fingerboard on, you can't get the truss rod out to repair it, or you can't make changes. And so you have to get it right every single time. It has to be solidly installed, and it also has to be an effective design. Not all truss rods are. The truss rods we use have evolved because in our climate, in the middle of winter, the temperature is -40, and it's incredibly dry. Your skin is cracking, your lips are cracking. In summertime, it can be +35 and super humid. And so we see swings that you normally wouldn't see. Nobody buys a bass because of the truss rod. Let's be real here. We worry about it so you don't have to worry about it. Okay. People do buy instruments, though, because they look good. And so I've been designing guitars for 40 years, and before that, amateurly for at least 10 years before. And I've studied car design and motorcycle design and architecture and human form. And it's my belief that timeless design requires curves to be elegant and smooth and flowing and balanced. And so that's what we try to achieve with Dingwall guitars. So good design is expensive. It's difficult to do, but it adds value. Now, just think about that. Has anybody tried to sell a piece of gear that looked dated, or the color was weird, or nobody played that type of instrument anymore? Have you ever tried to sell gear like that? Yeah, you don't get your money's worth. It's a real pain. It's not a positive experience. And so the more timeless we can make our instruments look, the more value it is for you, the more your investment is protected. And if you're anything like me, the guitar or the bass that you don't like looking at goes in a case, and the guitar or bass that you love to look at hangs on the wall or it sits on a stand, and every time you walk into a room, you stop and you look at it. How many people have had the experience where you're on your way out the door, you stop, you see your guitar, I'll play it for a minute, and you pick it up. All right, you guys are my people. Think about that. A few minutes extra every day of practice times 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I'm telling you, a good-looking bass will make you a better bass player over the course of time.
네.
I'm kind of kidding here, but it is true. Okay, so we talked about looks. Let's talk about something really important. So, how many people have noticed that the cost of high-quality audio has just gotten so inexpensive? How many people remember black and white TVs with a little speaker like this? Or maybe your parents would remember that. Now, home audio is just incredible, and it doesn't cost a whole lot of money. Therefore, your audience has listened to more quality audio than at any time in the past. Your audience has a higher expectation of what good audio sounds like. That's important. And so at Dingwall, what we try to do is we try to provide the best source tone possible to make you sound better, to make these amazing PA systems sound even better. Now, 5-string basses, parallel frets, standard strings. How many people have had the experience where the B string sounds warm and round and dark, and the G string sounds bright and snappy? So they sound completely different. How many people had that experience? And so some people like that. Some people like the variety across the strings. But think about this. You're sending what's like 5 different bass guitars to the front of house and asking the engineer to mix all 5 basses to sound equally good in the mix, and then EQ the mix to sound good in the room. So that's a lot of EQing. That's a lot of work for that person to do, and sometimes they're not that successful because it's too hard to do. And so if you could make all the strings sound more similar, so it's like sending one bass guitar to the engineer, it's going to be a lot easier for them to do their job. And I know this because engineers come to me all the time and they say, that's the easiest bass I've ever mixed.
스트링마다 굉장히 톤이 비슷하고 그렇다면 이제 엔지니어가 그 소리를 받아서 작업을 하기가 굉장히 쉽겠죠. 제가 이 얘기를 어떻게 아냐면요, 제가 연주를 할 때마다 모두 다 엔지니어들이 와서 진짜 지금까지 해본 것 중에 가장 쉬웠어요 라고 얘기를 할 정도로 저희는 톤이 일정합니다.
And so how did we do this? We didn't do it with any one thing. We didn't do it with woods. We didn't do it with the multi-scale system or strings or pickups or bridges. It's an ecosystem. Multi-scale was a huge leap forward. But multi-scale with standard strings is not as optimized as multi-scale with multi-scale design strings. And so the strings maximize the effect of the multi-scale. Then the pickups that we've designed maximize the tone of the strings. And then the hardware we designed maximizes the connection between the strings and the body. And then the woods we use they're typical normal woods that you'd use on most bass guitars so that it sounds like it should. It sounds like a traditional bass guitar, but just with this extra clarity. So we developed our own strings, and we designed each string only for the scale length that it's going to be at. We don't have to design a B string for a 34-inch scale because we don't make a 34-inch scale. We design it exactly for our basses. How many people drink Red Bull? Okay. How many people like F1 racing or MotoGP racing? This bridge on the right, we collaborated with Riviera Designs from Italy and Federico Pecci. His background is in F1 racing with the Red Bull team and Ducati for MotoGP. And so we collaborated his tuning system with our minimalist bridge. Quad tone pickup selector. So a volume control, a tone control, a blend control especially, they load down your pickups, they reduce the output, and they roll off a lot of top end. A switch, on the other hand, allows signal to pass through it without affecting it. Now, with the quad tone, it allows you to get 4 distinct bass tones. They sound pre-mixed, they sound pre-produced, and it's like instead of carrying 4 basses to a gig, you can show up with 1 bass, and it does all 4 jobs. Now, electronics-wise, there's an interesting thing with multi-scale, properly designed multi-scale strings. You tend to not need a lot of EQ, but we do have EQs available. So we've had the chance to work with 2 of the most respected names in musical electronics. Darkglass, how many people have heard of Darkglass? And Rupert Neve Design. How many people have heard of Rupert Neve Design? That's impressive. Darkglass, of course, are the kings of modern metal. Rupert Neve Design are royalty in recording studios. So we collaborated with Darkglass to create the first onboard bass preamp that ever made, called the Tone Capsule, and it was designed for the NG model. And guess where the final specs were decided on the Tone Capsule? So the members of Darkglass and Nolly and I were sitting at a restaurant in Disneyland. And so the Tone Capsule was designed in Disneyland. Okay, Rupert Neve Design. This was the first preamp that they've ever designed to be an onboard bass preamp. So we've got 2 of the very first onboard preamps from both of these companies. We've also developed an onboard distortion for the Hellboy, and that now is in the Rob Vanderloo signature model. And then, of course, we have a Dingwall distortion pedal, which is made by Darkglass. So let's talk about the benefits for the player. Now, we talked about even tone from string to string to string, but there's also even tension. And that does a couple of really interesting things. That means that you have even feel and you have even output. And that's really an amazing benefit. And so because you have more even tension, you need less compression. And so that gives you more freedom of expression with dynamics, playing lighter, playing heavier. So also because you need less compression, I'm not saying you don't need any compression, but you need less. That allows you to go from fingerstyle to slap to tap to pick style without huge changes in volume, and so that also allows you to be more expressive and opens up your ability to follow your creative ideas. Now, upper frets. Design the instrument to be as transparent in feel in this area here. We call those the money frets. That's where you get paid to play music as a bass player. That's how you pay for expensive basses. The upper frets, they're more angled, and they'll take you a little longer to get used to. But those upper frets, they reward good technique. They reward the effort of getting used to them. Why? Because the fretted notes are more in tune with the open notes. Because the tone is more pure. Chords sound sweeter. And so, yeah, it takes a little bit more time to get used to those upper frets, but every note you play, every chord you play from that point on. So a good B string sounds good open. A better B string sounds good at the 5th fret. A really, really good B string sounds good at the 12th fret. And anything up above the 12th fret is an amazing B string if it sounds good above the 12th fret. when I talked about that story about the guitar players not having no mids and just being mud cannons, the same thing applies to bass. Tight bass is easier to mix, it fits better in a mix, it cuts better, it's more accurate pitch-wise, and you can hear yourself better and your bandmates can hear you better. And if they can hear you better, you can all play better as a unit. Okay, so it's more than just the fundamental with bass. Fundamental is what you feel, but it's the mid-range is what you hear as the pitch definition and the note. And so properly designed multi-scale, properly designed multi-scale strings mean that the fundamental and the mid-range are aligned and they're all moving together. They're all working together to push that speaker out and in, out and in. And that becomes more efficient. You can sound louder with less power. You have more punch, and it's less fatiguing on the ears. How many people think of Dingwall as a metal brand? We're very grateful to the metal community for adopting us as a base. But the truth is, metal came to us. We didn't come to metal. We just had a bass that worked really well for metal, and it allowed metal musicians to develop new styles and push their music further and further. But these same advantages are for any style of music. They're for K-pop, they're for Bollywood, they're for country music, they're for jazz, they're for fusion. All of these advantages are genre agnostic. So how many don't own a Dingwall, but they're kind of thinking about it? Here's what I recommend. I recommend listening to the style of music that you want to play that uses a Dingwall bass, and then look for live bands that have a Dingwall bass and go experience it from the audience perspective. And if you like the sound, then you've spent no money. Then you can start looking at, okay, all of the best music stores that we deal with are like them. They are passionate and they're there for the community. So Dingwall it's almost like two companies that run side by side. We have a custom shop where we develop new ideas, and we have some of the best luthiers in the world. They've come from all over the world to join our team. We have luthiers from Russia, from Japan, from all across Canada. And so our custom shop, they do all the woodworking, they do all the metalworking, and they make the pickups and they assemble the electronics. The model line starts with the Afterburner series. These are all the same base, same neck, same electronics, same hardware. Where they're different is in the bodywoods and the finishes. And so the ABZ, matter of fact, if you order the ABZ with no options, it's actually less expensive than a John Taylor model. So you can get a custom shop for less money than a production model. But of course, everybody options them up and adds preamps and things like that, but you don't need to. The Afterburner 1, alder, gloss finish. The ABZ, swamp ash body, satin finish. And then the Afterburner 2, semi-hollow walnut with an exotic top. This is the bass that, oh man, in your living room, unplugged, you're just surrounded by this organic, acoustic-like tone. Jazz gigs, softer music. It's not the most aggressive sounding bass, it's more for sweet and soft music, but it's fantastic for that. The D-Rock, it's developed into its own line. We have 3 different versions. The Rock Vanderloo is the newest, and it's designed to look like it's made out of aluminum. It's carved mahogany, but it's finished to look like aluminum, and under lights, looks amazing. The Super Series, these are great for more traditional gigs. The scale lengths are shorter by 2 inches, so they're punchier, they decay a little faster, and they're more traditional looking, at least as traditional as the Dingwall gets. Then the Effigy, we have that exact bass right here, and I would love if you gave it a try tonight, if there's time. Now, the Z Series, that is where we started. That was the first bass I designed back in 1993. Our custom shop has a waiting list currently of about 3 years. And so if you were to place an order today, it would be about 3 years from now before we'd be able to ship you your bass. As a result, there are very few Z Series models anywhere in the world in a store. And Seoul has 2. They have this one right here, and they have another one that is a natural wood, but they're both both the top level of what we do at Dingwall. I would imagine worldwide there would be less than 20 in music stores, probably closer to 10, except in Seoul you have two out of 10 in the world. The Leeslar signature, that's based on the Z, and it's really interesting. It has mandolin frets. They're tiny, tiny little frets. And when you play it, it feels almost like a fretless. It almost feels like there's no frets at all. And Leeslar is one of the most recorded bass players in history. He's been using the Leeslar signature for over half of his career. So we also have the other side of our business, which is the ready to play. Ready to play comes from the fashion term ready to wear. So it's designed by high performance, high quality, high performance luthiers, but it's at a more affordable, ready to play price. Then the instruments are shipped to Canada, and we have a team that goes through each instrument. They do the fretwork, they do the nut work, go through the electronics, and they rebuff the finishes. So 2 to 4 hours on every single bass is done in Canada to get them as close to Canadian custom shop quality as possible. 17 years ago, we started with combustion. That led to the NG. Has anybody heard of the NG model? Does anybody own an NG model? Glad to see. Then came the JT, then the Nashville, and new for this year is the Amos Williams from Tesseract. And then the reason you're all here is there's one more bass that we're introducing this year, and it's the Jacob Yamanski signature model. And I'm not sure which one, we have two here, but one of them has never been played in front of a live audience before, so you're the first ones to hear it. So Dingwall makes their own pickups. I'm just going to run through these really quickly. If you can't find the tone you want in a Dingwall pickup, then you need to pick up another hobby, maybe guitar instead. We provide any tone you could possibly want. So we like to think that we, as a company, we try to be innovative. And the reason for being innovative to us is so that we can create an instrument that stretches out and gives the artist more room to be innovative. So how many people have noticed how much metal has evolved in the last 10 years? It's evolved more so than in the last probably 20 years previous. And the reason for that is because the metal artists had the equipment that allowed them to push the boundaries. There was a revolution in bass, in sound production, in dark glass electronics, our basses, Class D amps. The whole bass world just evolved in the last 10 years, and the metal community benefited the most, I'd say. And so some of our innovations were the very first production multi-scale bass. And I gotta say that in the late 90s, we almost went out of business because in the late 90s, the most uncool thing you could do is be the world's only multi-scale production bass. But we stuck it out. One of the other innovations that was key was the 37-inch B string. And that has become almost a standard in multi-scale bass world. One of the other innovations were multi-scale specific strings. This is the world's first set of multi-scale specific bass strings. This is an innovation-ish, and it's how do you squeeze that 37-inch B string into a bass and not turn the bass into this monster. Take a look at the length of a standard 4-string and notice that the NG is actually a shorter bass overall. The body's smaller and the entire instrument is smaller than a standard 4-string. So you get 3 inches longer scale length for free. It doesn't cost you anything in terms of playability. Okay, I'm going to skip through some of these last innovations. The magnetic battery cover. The effigy, I've got a couple of innovations I'd like to talk about with this one. First of all, how do you hang a headless bass? It's pretty difficult. And so we created these wings that pop out, they're held by magnets. How do you put a clip-on tuner on a big stubby headstock like that? Well, you flip out a wing and you just put it there. How do you change your strings if you dropped your wrench and can't find it? Well, with this one you don't need to. These are all finger tight. And then lastly, the body has been designed like a marimba bar. It's really thin in the center and it's thick at the ends. And so when you play that B string, you can just feel this thing come alive. It resonates like a marimba bar. Okay, so We try to be as innovative as possible so that you, as a musician, can be as innovative as possible. Because it's the innovators that change the world. And so I'd like to walk off the stage to make room for one of the most innovative bass players of the last 10 years. Let's hear it for Jacob Umansky. Thank you, everybody.